Welcome to My Accent is No Accident podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Perez. And with us today is a man with an extraordinary story of resilience. He is Karl Pontau, better known as a storyteller. As a senior digital creative producer with 11 years in B2B marketing, Karl is passionate about bringing teams together to transform complex ideas into captivating visual stories. His collaborative leadership style has driven meaningful projects from contributing to a 1.13 billion SPAC event to creating a heartfelt local campaign to reduce fentanyl overdoses. Companies and agencies come to Carl because they know he will inspire their team, take ownership of the projects, and ensure their work aligns with business goals while touching people's lives. With an entrepreneurial spirit and empathic approach, Carl specializes in turning technical briefs into powerful narratives that resonate with diverse audiences and deliver measurable results. Welcome, Carl. It is an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you. Doing all right. Excited to be on the program and talk to you.
Awesome. So, we're going to start with our theme question. Carl, what is your accent and why is not an accident?
Thank you very much. Yes, my background, I have a great story about what drives me and why I do what I do. And it starts with I've been an artist my entire life. I grew up drawing, painting, sculpting, big Lego kid. And I got my passion for storytelling from my dad. He's a really good storyteller. And I knew I wanted to study animation when I saw the first Toy Story film. I was like, ooh, that I gotta do that. That's so cool. And then beginning in 2002, I started to feel like something wasn't quite right with me physically. I'd been a competitive swimmer growing up, so I knew what I was supposed to feel like. And it wasn't like, oh, my shoulder kind of hurts. It was like a general blah feeling. But by August, they still hadn't figured out what was wrong with me. And I had lost 50 pounds, had sunken cheeks and eyes. I was really pale, started to get really bad headaches. So my parents took me for an MRI up in Walnut Creek. And we were waiting around for another appointment when my pediatrician called and said he's going to drive up from Pleasanton to come talk with us. We saw him walking up with this big envelope in his hands. You could tell he'd been crying, and he brought us into a little side meeting room. And I remember I was sitting knee to knee with him in this big U shaped chair with really high armrests, kind of leaning forward towards him, when he pulled out the results of the MRI and said, Carl, you have two brain tumors. And it felt like I got punched in the chest. I actually moved backwards in my chair. And for the next 2 weeks, everything sounded like the adults from Peanuts, like what, 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 because I've never had the flu, never broken any major bones, never been stung by a bee. I'm pretty sure I've never been bitten by a mosquito. So to get brain tumor diagnosis at 15 years old was a complete sucker punch out of nowhere. But I got so much help from friends and family, and my high school adjusted my schedule, got me a tutor so I could still graduate on time, and people I barely knew were giving food and gifts and other support. So it really inspired me to want to give back and help as many people as I could, because I'd probably be dead if it wasn't for all the help that I got. And then in undergraduate school, as I was studying animation, there was a big student digital art and design competition I participated in with this big screening at the end of like 1,000 people in this big auditorium. I knew maybe 10 people in the room. But when everyone laughed at the joke of my animation, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. I can connect with people and have a bigger impact with animation and storytelling. So after grad school, I had started my own company called Squash and Stretch Productions, which I ran till February of last year when, due to the economy and other factors, I was burnt out. It wasn't working. So pivoted from that, and I've been working at freelance and focusing on helping health tech and med tech companies because they have a huge potential for helping a lot of people, but often struggle to help people feel the right way at the right time with the right content when they're creating their messaging. And so that's what I do with my expertise is I create content systems that get the right message to the right people so they are moving through the sales and marketing process more effectively and actually allows these companies to have the positive impact on the world that they can. So that's what I do.
Wow, what a story. I heard it the first time and now I'm listening to it again and it's still very impactful. So
Thank
what
you.
was yes, it's like being 50 years old and then being told that oh, your life is about to end. It's probably a big impact in in a kid 15 years old.
Yeah, definitely got rid of that teenage invincibility complex most youths have, where they kind of feel like nothing can hurt them. And I was like, oh, I am mortal. Okay. But yeah, it was definitely a shock to the system. Although weirdly, when I after the initial surprise, there was this feeling of relief because I had been sick for 8 months. I knew something was wrong, but we didn't know what it was. So it was really frustrating. So there was like this, oh my gosh, this is terrible, but also this wave of like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we know what it is so we can actually do something about it.
Yes.
Um, and then so my pediatrician told us that not to go to the other appointment in Walnut Creek, drive up to Sacramento. The following morning, I had a 7 hour biopsy surgery and I was in the ICU for a couple weeks. And towards the end of this day, a doctor came in with the biopsy results. And I remember he walked in the room and said, "You got the good type of cancer." And I was like, "What?"
Oh,
Um, but now I realize in the grand scheme of things, it could have been a lot worse. If you had to pick a type of brain tumor to get, you'd probably pick mine because it was very treatable. It's not coming back. It's not even a remission thing. And so I had uh like it was like a 90% chance of beating it, only 10% chance of it coming back in the first 5 years, and it's been over 20. And so I had 4 rounds of chemo and 20 days of radiation. My last day of treatment was New Year's Eve. So I started 2003 kind of with that behind me in a way. Um, and so it definitely changed my perspective on what's like important in life and the sort of impact I want to have with my work and the people that I help.
yes.
And I mean, I there's a lot of potential for innovation and improvement in health tech and med tech and just healthcare in general. But a lot of these companies struggle to explain their value and evoke the right emotional responses with people.
Yes.
And so a lot of these innovations that they're working on kind of don't go anywhere just because they can't explain their value clearly enough, which is really unfortunate because like chemo and radiation work, but they still suck. And so there's a lot of really exciting things that could be replacing those or making them less awful. And I want to help those sort of companies succeed and improve the patient experience.
That is incredible because I believe that not only your experience was meant to be, but it for those companies and for your creativity process and understand that there was more um, to live, than just being alive, but just making sure that you take care of your health and yourself, and then also realizing all the people that you have that love you around you.
Yeah, it was definitely something I couldn't have gone through by myself. And the experience really solidified that it takes a group effort to accomplish anything worthwhile. And that um, even if someone seems like they're like a self-made person, there's always people behind the scenes that supported them. No one ever gets anywhere by themselves. And so we really need to build strong relationships with people and give and be supportive because you never know when you'll be in need of someone's help. And um, it's those relationships that'll get you through the challenges that everyone goes through some sort of challenges. But it's when you're getting gifts from your parents, coworkers that you've met maybe once like 10 years before at like a bring your family to work day thing, like, but they're giving support and like bringing meals over or giving you gifts and like just showing all this support for, and you don't have to have had a huge, deep, long-term relationship with someone, but just being able to give and support other people when they need it is the sort of mindset that I wish more people in our country had, in the world had. And I think there's in general just a lack of empathy and human connection in the world.
Mhm.
And so when people actually feel seen, heard, and understood by someone else who actually takes the time to listen and understand, it really stands out. And so kind of my ulterior motive with my work is that if I can get the companies I work with or work for to be more empathetic towards their customer bases and their users and their employees, then that should kind of bleed over into their personal lives. And if there's more empathetic in general to their family and friends, then the world is better off because of it.
Exactly. And what was your first animation that in that contest that you entered? What was that about?
It was just a little story. It was about, oh man, I don't remember like what I called it, but it was this little robot that was in a, it was really basic. It was a 3D animation. And looking back, it was like, it, the visuals were terrible, but the whole story is that there are these really big robot with three little, um, jars in front of it. There's a sign that says only take two, and it picks up two of the jars and it thinks about taking the third one. And when it goes to reach for the third jar eats it. It's like swallows this whole big robot, and then the animation begins with the robot kind of falling in the frame from above, and then the end of the animation is basically that whole cycle starting again. Like it didn't learn, like a bit of this before, and don't take the third one, and so it just there's a little joke at the end. So when people, and the thing that made people laugh was that the jar burps at the end when it eats the robot. So there's like this people when people realize that what the scenario was, this robot keeps making the same mistake. It made them laugh, and hearing a whole auditorium full of people laugh, which had this huge endorphin boost. Like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I've
Yes.
I can, and then like looking back, like the quality of the animation, I wouldn't even show it to anyone now. But it's like just it was a story. It wasn't the visuals. It wasn't the visual panache of the animation, but it was the story I told that, and the way I communicated that made people laugh and feel a certain way. And so that was a big aha moment for me, was that this with the story you can get inspire people to feel a certain way, and that is really powerful when you're trying to be persuasive, especially in a business sense.
Exactly. That is amazing. And I can picture, I'm picturing as you tell me, I picture the story and my head. It is amazing how the creativity just kept on working on you after all these things. And then you continue your process on like I really want to do this for life because I am loving this and this is like doing something that I love for living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's most students when they're in college, it's very common that they have some uncertainty about the what they're studying, if the career path is something they're really going to enjoy, or if they're doing the right thing. And so getting that sort of validation and experience that, ooh, this is the sort of uh, impact I want to have on people, was great to get, because I think it was only my like sophomore year. It was pretty early on in the, so it helped me be more confident that the path I was
Yes.
on was one that I was going to be fulfilled by and wouldn't be regretting uh 5-10 years down the line.
Exactly. And then you started to realize that all going through chemo and all the healthcare that you got, the the work is incredible and they're saving lives, but they are not conveying their stories the right way because people don't understand it and sometimes people don't just don't see it. But you started to see that if you were to put animation to it, it will be easier for people to understand what they will go through.
Well, I mean, animation is one tool. I like animation because it's so versatile, and you can make it look, and like you can tell pretty much any sort of story with it. You're not limited by physical locations or the weather or other like or physics. you can make it look however you want. So it's really versatile, and I love that about it. But it's more about telling the right story and conveying information in a way that your your audience will resonate with, and you got to think about it from not just what you want to say or what you're excited about, but what is going to make your audience, what do they need to feel and understand, and what where they're at emotionally or and priority wise, and what their pain points are. um you have to address those and show you really understand them for them to actually notice and care. And so a lot of companies, especially in the startup space, get really enamored with their product or their technology or the things that they're excited about. And yes, you need to have a high quality product to be successful, but it's
Exactly.
um the depending, especially depending on if you're going after individual like patients or payers, or you have to reframe your messaging to the priorities of your audience and have them in mind. And so many startups don't do that well.
Yes.
And even just even larger companies, there's all these, there's plenty of articles about marketing mistakes or kind of campaigns that were PR disasters because of how poorly the company understood their audience and how people would react to it, which just is a indication of how kind of the lack of empathy people exercise. Um, and so I think one of my strengths is really being able to actively listen and understand not just what people are saying they care about, but digging deep and really understanding the emotional driving motivators for them, because people make decisions with emotions and then back it up later with like this reason and logic and data, which is how our brains are wired. I've learned a lot about how the brain works ever since the brain tumor thing, because I was fascinated by that whole subject. And the a lot of companies will do like a survey and say, oh, people bought our thing because of all these specific features or whatever, but they fail to understand that the part of your brain you use when you answer a survey is not the same the part of your brain you use when you're making a buying decision. And so if you're asking the wrong part of the brain why they did something, you're not going to, and you base your marketing messaging and all your communication on that. It's not talking to the part of the brain that's making the buying decisions, and you're you're going to struggle to get people to buy. And so it's really about having a better understanding of human behavior and how messy and complicated it is, and that um again it really comes down to understanding people and not as just a
Yes.
group, or and like so it's that aspect of the storytelling process and the content creation
Yes.
process is something I'm really good at.
Yes. And that's one of the things that you talk about, right? What makes a story difficult. And then you have like a couple of examples on what and why are stories difficult, which involves the emotional part. And would you like to
Yeah, I mean
say
there's
something?
what makes a story difficult is usually it's because there's really complex or abstract ideas is the main one, but also could just be an emotionally triggering topic. And the people, if they, you need to get them to feel something to act, but if you don't want to overload them or get them to shut down because a topic is too uncomfortable, and especially in health and medtech, there's a lot of emotions around different like diseases or injury, like kind of conditions and stuff. And there's a lot of stigma and shame around some of them. And there's so approaching a subject with the right level of tact and understanding of um, how you can communicate your message and connect with people and evoke the right level of emotion without being overwhelming or uh, insulting them by being too like
Graphic.
or not graphic, but it's like if you're telling a story about someone who's been through a traumatic event as like a case study of someone you help, you don't want it to seem like you're exploiting them to like sell your thing for you. So it's like
Okay. Yes.
treating the subject matter with the right amount of respect. And so you got to find that balance point between being salesy and just being like a fluff
Yes.
piece. And
Gotcha.
that can be tricky. And again, it really comes down to understanding your audience well. And then there's other ones where just if it's someone's really personal story, um, no, especially if you're doing health related stuff, like making sure that you're respecting their privacy and their uh, like who they are as a person, being respectful
Yes.
is it makes the story difficult to tell. And so um, I like working with those because there's that extra level of challenge, but when it's done right, it's some of the most impactful storytelling out there because it's going to speak to something that really inspires people to act because they understand its importance and it gets them to feel again the right amount of emotion at the right time.
So what you basically do is you show emotionally compassion, empathy for the clients and their team members, and especially the audience. You first, what you're doing is understanding the audience and making sure that, like for instance, they you are not showing them as victims. You are showing them as a story, not as, oh, the poor person.
Yeah, that's one thing you want to avoid is, but and also just there's yeah, it depends on the topic. There's no like cookie cutter one size fits all approach,
Mhm.
and it also you gotta need to tweak it depending on who the the subject matter of your story is and what their situation, and then who your audience is for the story and what's going to resonate with them. And so there's um it takes a lot of uh, research and understanding of your subject matter and the
Mhm.
and your audience to make sure it's all going to be received properly. And a big mistake is assuming that you know how people are going to feel about things, and so it really helps to ask those questions and get inside their
Yeah.
head and understand them on a human to human level first.
Hi, I'm very happy to know you are here watching our podcast today. It is an honor to be featuring so many entrepreneurs on the journeys of their inside voice, their accent that is not an accident. And we want to reach out more people like you who are creating a better world of diversity, inclusiveness, equity, and belonging. So please take a moment to hit the subscribe button below, like, and share to others. And even if you want to leave a comment, that'll be nice. Thank you for your support. And now back to the episode. And that also comes, like, is not only the part of animation emotion, but it's also it comes to more and more opportunities like video production and in in whole like content that is a content, and you have a system that
Yeah.
allows you to.
Well, I mean, it's the gone are the days where you can just put out one video and put it on like your website and it'll sell your whole product for you. You have to get your content in front on multiple platforms and tweak it for depending on how familiar people are with your brand and your business and your product. And so um, the best way to get all the different content on different formats and platforms is to have a system and like an asset library and be able to iterate and adapt it for like for social media websites, presentations, events, keynotes, print media, and then be able to also adapt it for specific decision makers. And so having a content system for a campaign or for your brand is the way to get the most ROI for your investment instead of trying to rebuild the wheel or reinvent the wheel every time when you're trying to do a new piece of content. If you can reuse and adapt this common content library, then you know that it's going to be on brand and it's can be done quickly and affordably, despite the volume of content you need, which is a huge challenge for a lot of companies, especially when they've been relying on product marketing for so long and are now trying
Yes.
to switch to content marketing. And it's a whole nother like kind of challenge that they need the right team to handle.
Yes, exactly. So what you're touching a couple of points that I love that you're saying, because it's not only just shoot a video and then that's it, and then present like many people do the 1 to 3 minute video presenting themselves, and it's not only about that, but it's also I to my opinion, my personal opinion is like those videos are usually very boring because it's just one person speaking in front of the camera. They have a very nice environment around them, but I believe that you need some kind of like animation or things that come up as they talk and they show um, a story, because that keeps the person a little bit entertained first, and second, they also if you have examples of the content of what you are talking about and you put those as the person is saying it, then that is your testimony of what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean the talking head video, and with people's attention spans as short as they are, having the right format and length to the video is important, and having good b-roll and also just the right story to tell is going to be the most important thing. It doesn't matter how great your visuals are if the story, if the message doesn't resonate, doesn't grab people's attention and hold it, it's not gonna, doesn't matter what your visuals are. But it's um the to get people, especially if you're aiming for like an executive to take time out of their day to really engage on a deep level with your content, they're going to need to get to know you first, and you need to have other things before that video that show you understand them and pique their interest and kind of drip feed them um, the message and build that relationship, so they'll be willing to commit to watching a longer video or reading a white paper or visiting your website and staying for more than 2 seconds. So understanding the what the relationship building process is like with people helps you understand what content you need and how you need, where that you need to put what content in what order, and then be able to track how well it's doing and adapt appropriately, is what a content system lets you do a lot quicker and cheaper than trying to
Yes,
do it all from scratch.
exactly. And there are many things in the content, and especially visual content, that need are required because you need to be diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you need to be diverse, you need to make sure that you are showing this for all kinds of audiences, but also there is a little bit of accessibility, so the colors that you use, everybody's gonna have to be able to see them, to see the contrast, and the diversity among the things that you show, so that again comes to empathy, inclusiveness, and make people feel like they belong, and not make people feel like, what are they trying to tell us, they're this is exclusive.
Yeah, and understanding, especially for the B2B space, if you're trying to get a company to buy your product, you need to convince multiple people in the company that have different priorities. And so what it gets the CEO of something excited is not going to be what motivates the CFO to sign on. And so you need to be able to explain your value to each of those different decision makers in in terms of it's going to convince them and make them feel excited to support the purchase. And so there's that aspect of adapting your messaging and iterating things so that you're focusing on the things that each of those decision makers is going to care about, and not just expecting them to draw those connections for you.
Exact. Exactly. So, and there are different. Also, you mentioned something that I just recalled. That is, uh, many people, entrepreneurs and business owners, any type of business really have an immense library of content that they don't take leverage on. That they don't leverage this content to use it as marketing tools. So that is another thing that you can do, like go ahead and use the library that you have of content and repurpose it to take leverage, and may sometimes it results in a graded ROI, right?
Well, yeah, I mean I saw a LinkedIn post last week where it was two bar graphs. One was solid, and it was like, here's how much you think about your product. And the other bar graph was, here's what all the things your audience thinks about. And it's like all these little tiny slices of, so like you're thinking that all the content you put out is, you see it all and you're really well familiar with it, but your audience maybe sees one or two pieces of it and it's spaced out over time, and it's not, again, you have to understand their perspective on it. They might have only seen a couple things. And so if you have this library of content you've put out that you can reuse and repurpose stuff and take screenshots or pull assets from, and you don't have to keep creating things from scratch because your audience hasn't seen all of it. And if they have seen it, they probably don't remember it all. And so you can um, keep reusing and repurposing and adapting things, especially if you've been tracking how well things are performing. You can know what's worked best and you can keep iterating off of that. And um, just remembering that just because you've seen it all and know all the details, your audience maybe at most has seen 10% of it, or even like remembers less of that. So it'll still be new to them, even if you feel like you're repeating yourself. Uh, Again, it's just it's understanding the perspective on you and your brand and how hard you need to work to get the kind of brain space in your audience's day. That takes a lot more uh, effort and focus
Yeah.
than a lot of people expect.
Yes, I see that when what you're saying exactly right now, like call the attention to the audience, because sometimes I don't know if you have seen this, but or you experience it the same way, but sometimes when we are watching a YouTube and it comes the time to play the ad, then people are waiting for 3, 4, 5, you know, the and then when it goes away, you hit immediately escape. But many times the video is so good that you stay there and you don't even realize you didn't hit escape. So that's the content that you really want to do, grab the attention of the audience.
Yeah, I mean, the understanding that, yeah, you might only have 5 seconds for a YouTube ad because people are going to hit that skip button. And so, or yeah, and it's, again, there's no one size fits all. You want to be able to, you need to adapt for your audience and what you're, the market you're in and the platforms that they're active on. And um, just understand that what the message needs to be for those different situations, because they're like people, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and people don't go to LinkedIn to buy things. They go there to like network and to learn stuff and to um, kind of connect with people. But they're very rarely do someone go, oh, I need to buy something for my business. Let me go check out LinkedIn. It is not the what people do. So if people go out there and are just constantly trying to sell on LinkedIn all the time, it gets annoying because that's not what the mindset people are in. So you need to understand different parts of like what the buyer's journey is like, what people are thinking when they're on certain platforms, and tailor again your messaging for that gets them to move through the process to usually something like your website or to an event or a phone call that is where they're going to be ready to make that purchase. And also to understand now, just like people learn way more about your product and your business before they ever talk to a salesperson, and it's so much more of the learning process and the buying decision making process happens before they even talk to you
Yes.
or talk to someone on your team or sign up for a demo or something like that. So your marketing needs to do a lot more um, of the education and
Attraction.
inspiration and the
Okay.
not necessarily trying like closing the deal, but getting them answering the questions they're going to have to get familiar and build trust before they even reach out to you because they're even like executives are watching a lot more videos and checking out content before they reach out to your business directly. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's about having a wide variety of messages and content and getting people through the decision making process without them having to talk to your team directly.
Yes, exactly. And we're almost getting to the end, but I would like to also comment something that we before we jump into the interview. um, we are both of us are advocates to mental health and suicide prevention. um, you also help a campaign to prevent the fentanyl overdose. I
Yep.
would like to pick your brain on that. How is the role of us entrepreneurs that are in the marketing space? How can we help?
Well, I think, I mean, I dealt with um, some depression after I pivoted away from my business 2 Februarys ago. And it was not a great spot and I think I was on Lexapro for a while because had thoughts of suicide and it was uh, really difficult. But I'm off it now and I'm in a much better space, um, like mental and physical health wise. Uh, Lost a bunch of weight and just am in much better mental health space. And I think that from the marketing perspective side of things, it's just about um, communicating and building awareness and destigmatizing mental health issues because there's a lot of shame still associated with mental health issues.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of isolation because you can't immediately tell that someone else is dealing with it. Um, but the more people talk about it, then the more compassion they feel from other people and more support they get, then the less power it has over them and the easier it is for them to overcome it. And so for people that work in the marketing space and are again, it's about evoking the right emotions with people at the right time, um, creating content and telling stories that help people feel understood and that they're not alone, and then there's options for getting help is really important. And I was really excited and enjoyed working on this campaign to reduce fentanyl overdoses. And actually, when they were filming the video portion, we were at there at the a BART station in Oakland. They actually administered Narcan to 2 people that were overdosing on site that day,
Oh, wow.
which was crazy. Um, but it's there's a lot of issues with like substance abuse and especially with fentanyl, you can't tell where if it's been laced into something until it's too late. And so um, I think awareness of the risks of fentanyl is one thing, but also just helping people manage and improve their mental health will uh, alleviate the fentanyl overdose rate because that's I think the stresses people are feeling and the anxiety and the um, like depression and stuff. If those are addressed, then people won't be abusing substances that end up being laced with fentanyl and overdosing. So the two are very much linked together.
Exactly. And I think that also you mentioned something very important. It is kind of like to me is always remember that you have a support group, that you have people that
Yep.
love you around you, and make sure just to speak up when you are not feeling well. And then there is, like you're saying, there is still a lot of shame around the topic. Like people feel like they shouldn't talk about it. It is very difficult for them or for us, for everybody. So always having a checkpoint with your friends and family members. If you feel like they're quiet, if you feel that there is something that is off with them, just always ask and be like everybody should support each other anyhow, but just being attentive to changes so that you can support before anything happens.
Yep.
Um, yes, and then what you say is very, very, very true. Is so much true about the overdose with prescription drugs. You never know. It just happens, and then there is like seconds um, to save somebody's life.
Yep. And it's um there's a lot of it's unless you're getting medication from like a pharmacy and it's been like and it just you got it from like even from someone that you trust, like don't just take pills that someone hands to you because if you don't know where it's from, it's really easy for um, it be laced with something. And again, like that takes like I think it's 2 or 3 milligrams, like basically 3 grains of salt worth of fentanyl is a lethal dose.
Yes,
And
imagine that.
it's smaller than like the a pencil lead tip. Like it's insane how little of it there needs to be for it to kill you. And yeah, and there's pretty much not real any way to test it like a pill or anything until yeah. So it's just yeah, be really careful and um talk to people and get help before you rely on substances because it only takes one mistake to be your last and then and there's nothing you can do about it afterwards because you're dead.
Exactly. Yes. And then the devastation to the family and people that love you is great and
Yeah.
is not. And then they become um, depressed. And so it turns into a domino effect.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Carl. Before we go, I would like to ask you and give you the opportunity to tell our audience how can you help them and where they can find you.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's the linkedin.com/in/KPONTAU. And if you're looking for help connecting on an emotional level with your audience in order to get them to uh, follow your calls to action and feel the evoke the right emotions at the right time for the right people on the right platforms, that's what I do with content systems for companies. And I'm focusing mostly on health tech and med tech, but if you're needing help in other industries, I'm happy to help there too. But it's a big challenge for a lot of companies to get out of their own heads and explain their value in terms that their audience will actually care about and follow their calls to action.
Yes, amazing. So thank you, Carl, for being here with us today. Would you like to leave the audience with a last thought?
Have a good rest of your week.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I love having you here. I love this information that you gave us about how to create content and how important it is to be empathic and compassionate about the content that we are creating, because that is important that we are diverse, inclusive, and we give a sense of belonging to everyone. Thank you
Yep.
so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And to my audience, remember, you're a being of love that came here to be loved and love one another. Till next time. Bye. Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.